Tad O'Malley again. If you're hurt or sick, can't work, Social Security could be the answer. Grab your cell phone. Call the lawyers at O'Malley and Langen, 1-800-817-2667. And remember, we don't get paid unless you win. Welcome back to You Be the Judge. Before the break, we talked about NAMI and your support groups, but you mentioned bipolar. And we were talking about, before the show started, we talked about the term mental illness and the stigma attached to it. If people only understood that having something like bipolar is very similar to having diabetes or it's caused by chemistry in the brain. The brain is an organ. It's not.
One of the things that we all advocate for is getting this information given to kids in schools.
Yeah.
You had mentioned when you hear the word suicide, you back off. Well, unfortunately, a lot of schools are still like that.
Yes.
And so when a kid, a teenager, starts having some symptoms, I mean, you could have symptoms in first grade, but it's unusual. But when you start having symptoms, because we don't teach anything about mental illnesses, and it's illnesses, not illness, mental illnesses, then people don't know what it is.
And they think it's the growing pains, so to speak,
Sure.
especially with teenagers.
Yes.
I can remember over 50 years ago, my best friend in 8th grade jumped up in class one day and screamed that he was tired of all these people talking about him and ran out of class. I left class right behind him and followed him home, and he was the best athlete.
And I bet he was ridiculed.
He was the best No, he wasn't, because he was the best athlete in our class.
Well, that kind of
He
helped
could
in
run
that
faster,
situation.
he could jump.
If he was the guy who was kind of like the bookworm or whatever, maybe would have been.
But as I look back at it, he was in a situation with a family of very depressed people. He cried, and my mother never talked to my father.
Sometimes it is
And
hereditary.
that kind of thing. And it's environment to a certain degree.
Absolutely.
But I saw that, and I thought, holy, there for the grace of God go I.
See, people don't understand that it's a biologically based brain disorder.
That's right.
Rather than say mental illness, we should probably say it's a brain disorder or a
That's it.
brain illness.
Sure.
And if people understood, what it was a result of, it's because of chemical imbalances. And just for a real quick medical explanation of it, we have millions of brain cells. And so our brain works on electrical impulses and chemical reactions. And the chemical reactions carry the brain impulses from one cell to the other because there's a gap there.
Sure.
And so somebody may not have enough serotonin or norepinephrine or epinephrine. And that's where where the chemical imbalances come in. So when those chemicals are balanced, now those impulses can be carried properly from one cell to the other. And now the brain functions as it should. Without those With those imbalances, it's not functioning the way it's meant to function.
And Kathy, I see with the workers' compensation clients that come through the office, after a period of time with no work, with sleep interruption, with financial worries, that in fact depression creeps in.
Absolutely.
And when you talk to them, and I've been to a number of Social Security hearings, and I always ask the question, has the thought of ending your life ever entered your mind?
That's wonderful.
And the fact of the matter is, that normally brings on tears, and the answer is yes.
One of the things that I know
just the hopelessness.
that we want to talk about is what supports are around locally. And NAMI is a wonderful support. I look at NAMI, and I know it's changing, but the way of looking at brain disorders is changing. It used to be that you go to a doctor and he's the specialist. So you didn't even involve the family. If I was the one with the brain disorder and I said I wanted my brother to come with me, the therapist probably would say, no, we want to focus on you. But now it's changed in that you welcome all the supports. And it's wonderful to hear that as an attorney, you see people in very difficult situations that you ask that question. One of the local supports, aside from NAMI, is the Advocacy Alliance has a depression bipolar support group that meets every Monday at 6 o'clock.
Where does that meet?
825 Jefferson Avenue. And you don't have to sign up. It doesn't cost anything. Come. You'll feel welcome, just as Jan said with the other group. It's people that understand.
That is worth repeating.
Okay. It's every Monday, 6 o'clock, 825 Jefferson Avenue with the Advocacy Alliance.
And you don't need a referral.
You don't need a referral.
And
You
it
don't
doesn't
need to
cost
even
you
share
anything.
your name. If you're worried about coming, bring a friend with you. There's a gentleman that brings his wife with them, and then until he felt more comfortable, and now he comes alone. And for people who've dropped out of treatment, that they could help support them to get them back into
And it's
treatment.
run by people who have depression and bipolar
Yeah.
disorder, have been
Yeah.
diagnosed with it.
Yeah,
And that is so
it's a
important.
wonderful
You know,
resource.
I thought Mike Wallace's story was
Uh-huh.
so
Yes,
powerful
yeah,
when
it
he
is.
came public and
Yeah.
said, I am
Yeah.
bipolar, and I've needed help a number of times in my life. I mean, we talked about this again at the break. A person who is manic thinks they can conquer the world.
Yeah. And you know what's funny, because we're in the mental health system, I don't know if you've ever felt this way, I take it for granted that people know what brain disorders are, what suicide is, what they're not, and I was just talking to someone who's coming to the walk. She lost her brother, who Jan and I were talking, he taught him in school, because Jan was a teacher, he taught 2 people
I've had
that have
two
lost their
students
lives
who,
to
took their
suicide.
lives to suicide.
Yeah.
When we come back from the break, I want to talk a little bit about the phenomenon of multiple suicides in one school district or one neighborhood or one area, because that
Yeah.
we see that
Contagion,
happen.
we
It's
call it
almost
contagion.
a contagion.
Yes.
And I also want to talk about funding, because
Okay.
you know, we saw, I think, the story in Georgia where that troubled young man came into a school to kill people and was talked off the ledge by that fantastic young lady
Yes.
that was there,
Yeah.
that told her that told him that she loved him
Yes.
Sure.
and that he needed his medications. That brings to light so many of the problems we're facing
Absolutely
today
does.
with gun violence. I mean, when you see gun violence, you're looking at people
Yeah.
that want to commit suicide but
Support
want to.
is, is
Yeah.
unbelievably
It is.
important. The support of family and friends,
Yeah.
and sometimes family members just
Yeah.
don't understand, and that's
Yeah.
where, education comes
Yeah.
in.
Well, please stay tuned to You Be the Judge, because we have a lot more to cover in this very important program.
Do you believe in clean water, fresh air, safe roads, and the natural beauty of our region? Learn about the unwanted effects of gas drilling. Visit gdacoalition.org.
Hi, I'm Todd O'Malley from the law offices of O'Malley and Langen. If I say the word tragedy, what do you think? Hurricanes, flooding, devastation on a huge scale. I'll bet not one of you thought work injury. And that's a problem in our society. Just because something happens one person at a time doesn't make it any less significant. Over 3.5 million people are injured or killed on the job every year, each an individual tragedy. If you've been hurt at work, your job, your family, your health, even your future could be at risk. Call O'Malley and Langen. You'll find there's a light at the end of the tunnel. We'll review your case, find that glimmer of hope, and fight back. If you're facing crippling medical bills, or they're forcing you back to work too soon, call O'Malley and Langen 24/7. Nights and weekends, one of our lawyers will answer the phone. Call 1-800-817-COMP. That's 1-800-817-2667.